therefore, today we are looking at community-based Black education and how we can enhance that education on the Web3. So I remember when I was growing up, one of the ways in which we were given education was through folk tales, through storytelling, through different ways in which we can get education, but without actually having to go to school. In other words, we're given this informal kind of education, which helped to shape us, which helped to make us better people. I'm very much interested in that aspect of education. I don't know if because we're coming from different background. I don't know how our initial education was like. So I want us to look at that and say, do we think it's possible to be able to take that kind of education, which I believe it is the education that we own as Black people? We own this kind of education, folk tales and storytelling and all that. So is it possible for us to be able to do that, enhance that kind of education through the Web3? So that's my first question that I would love us to discuss that one.
So I'll take a stab at it first. To answer your question, yes, it is possible. I think that there are definitely some hurdles, but that type of education is one of the major, not components, but that's what's so exciting about Web3. Some of the barriers can be removed and you can get educators directly in front of the learners, which is very important. Now, one of the components of community-based education is about lifelong learning. And to me, lifelong learning means you have from K beyond 12. Like you mentioned, grandfathers learning, but not just learning, but educating also. So if we're able to find a way to get some of the educators, when I say educators, I don't mean just teachers. I mean your uncles, your aunties, those who still have that, I don't want to say the Black education, but those who have the history and can find some way to bottle it up and put it in some sort of package and make it available on Web3, because that's a big component of it, being able to package up and make it available for users.
All right, thank you, Colin.
I think that's very possible, and I'm hoping to see that. Here in the States, our educational system is very hierarchical. It's very top down. The curriculums and everything are set in environments that we're not a part of. One thing that I really enjoyed about my trip to Nairobi, Kenya, a few years ago, was I got the storytelling, kind of that history, and it's more oratorical, it's more impactful. Blockchain and distributed ledger technologies and Web3 kind of disintermediate. So the content provider will be able to, as Colin said earlier, get directly in front of the educators, in front of students. And I think that's really going to be, if you will, the framework that we now can kind of get back some of our history, and we can take a much more active role in the education of our kids, of our people.
I believe I agree with everything that they're both saying. I do hope that Web3 would deliver that. I think it might be a challenge for Web3 because Web3 doesn't address the misinformation, the disinformation, and the malinformation that's miseducating our community currently. Right now, we all use a landmass of information called the internet that has a lot of bots, a lot of algorithms, sales funnels, echo chambers, and things that are meant to convert our way of thinking into the thought process of a consumer. So I believe that we would have to first look at addressing some of the concerns around the miseducation and the things that we use as reference material to make certain decisions. And if we can do that, then I believe that Web3 as a technology, as a vehicle, could be really helpful and useful as well.
Okay, I think we somehow do agree to a certain level that is possible. So, but how do we make it possible? I mean, like that would be like my follow-up question. How do we make all that possible? Maybe I start with you, Pastor. How do we make it possible?
Well, I think that we have to stop looking at things in terms of companies. I think that if I could have like just 1 minute, it goes from culture to communities, and communities create economies, which create exchanges, which create industries, which create marketplaces, and then you get companies. So you have all this space between culture, community, and then we create companies. And then you have this space in here where there's these other aspects of resources being allocated and cycled within the community that we don't have the infrastructure for. So I believe that we need to be thinking about creating our first digital infrastructure I think that we should be in the thought process of building economies and ways to cycle resources in our community using NFTs and a lot of the digital assets that we have access to, using blockchain for ownership, and really combining these technologies in a harmonious way that will address our community's concerns instead of continuing to move in the direction that other communities are moving in, because they already have their economies. And we're driving their economies with our ideas that these brothers are talking about. We're driving these economies with our culture and with our community. So we need to bridge that gap with infrastructure, in my opinion.
And I think you say something that really speaks to building, we're developing these unified data platforms so that we can become the hub. Because the key to infrastructure, I like the way that you kind of had that stratified system to get to the company or to the corporation. Because in order to get to that point, you have to have cohesiveness. You have to have kind of like a unified understanding of what it is. And so to start from the very beginning point, for us, is kind of get reconnected to what culture is, because there is so much misinformation driving our community and the decisions right now. And I speak a lot to our kids and I mentor a lot. And the first process is a kind of a reformation of the mindset. Is what's driving it. So a lot of it, I think, is going to have to start on local levels as far as groups that are impactful, and they can become the vehicle to, as a brother was saying, to get us past those first 3 steps. And now we have us guys working on this infrastructure to build these platforms to connect everyone to unified information that's coherent, that's cohesive, but most importantly, that we're driving. We are, as he said, we're 1.2 trillion in economic activity or output, but we spend 2.12% of that with each other. Until we can overcome those massive hurdles, the education piece now can be a vehicle to help us get past that. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get on my soapbox, but so many tie-ins to how getting to the front of it. I love the way you kind of broke that out.
Real talk, okay, real talk.
No, stay on the soapbox. People need to hear that, right? So I'm going to go back to a topic that every year we say this: education, right? Educating people on the potential of technology, also educating people on how to use technology. 2 very important parts. What is the potential? And W3 is supposedly going to level the playing field a little bit. I know a lot of technology say that, but making people understand what technology can do and also how to use it. But I also want to add another piece. We know that when people are in the blockchain space, there are a lot of what I call mercenaries. And one of the things we want to do, if we're putting learners directly in front of the educators, we want to make sure educators are there to educate and are not there to make money, because this is going to change a lot of the playing field, level up, so to speak. But now educators are going to be in a position to create their own curriculum, create their own learning topics. And are they doing that because they want to really teach or because they want to make money? So like mercenaries versus missionaries. So we have to make sure that coming in, people have the education to understand the potential. Yeah, you can make some money, but it's more important to help people skill up and be able to be in a better position next year than they are today through the taking of these courses and the impact of education.
Because you're talking about a real transition of value. Value is based off the language of the people that need it at the time. Like in a real system, if we're really leveraging this technology, it's gonna be people being educated in the places where they have an insecurity, where they're lacking, where they're this, where they're that. And you have to, for real value exchange to take place, it's not gonna be like homogenous. It's not gonna be the same thing for everybody. Like everybody on this call needs something different. So how can we assign value the exact same way? Like, no, we need these systems of governance. We need for communities to be able to come together and educate themselves on what they need to know. I agree with that.
Oh, thank you so much. We've got Mason who has just joined us. So maybe you can do a little bit of intro and then we can continue from there.
Okay, well, I've been an educator teaching technology for the past 22 years, and I'm a curriculum creator. And I created a curriculum in New York City that was used for New York City Tech, which is like, well, for my school, but New York City Tech also used my curriculum as well. And, but I'm also a multimedia artist and, just open to, trying to educate. I'm about to launch a platform where I'm teaching computer science for all, but for just community members, because I feel that, it's just technology is like the ABCs. It's just like we need, in order to level this playing field, we need to learn this language. But what I found is that a lot of computer science teachers, the way that they teach computer science, and a lot of people who know the technology don't know how to teach the technology effectively. So that's one thing, that's my expertise, is I'm really, really good at teaching technology, computer science and coding to just the average person. I consider myself a computer science whisperer.
Thank you so much, Megan. Yes, we're talking a lot about leveling the play field and circulating of educational information. And also we talk about some kind of misinformation that sometimes circulate also at the same time. As we're trying to bring that education to the people, there's also some kind of misinformation that happens. So how what kind of application or use cases can we, as the Black community, come up with to try and enhance this Black education, and at the same time ensuring that there is no misinformation that will be put on the blockchain?
Well, there will be misinformation put on the blockchain. Because I think the power of Web3 is you can really put anything out there, right? But I think it goes back to, if you have a community that sort of, I can't say filters, but sort of is there to play. I think Robert said it, governance, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. I don't know how to do that. You can have DAO set up, but I'm not sure if that's the answer. So I personally don't know the answer to that question. So let the brother speak on it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and definitely, if we are gonna have an opportunity to be able to do that, then we need a safe space to be able to do it in. We need a place that we have to own our infrastructure, or else somebody else can compromise the integrity of the information that we're sharing with our community. So we have to own the intellectual property. We need to be the core developers and key developers of that infrastructure. And I believe we need to be the first investors in, so that we can maintain control of what would be an economy. In doing that, I think that educators like the Queen on here, like people that actually are teaching how to use technology the right way, and then looking at technology from the lens of utility. We shouldn't just look at tech. That's what they're doing, and that's to make money. That's to get, I think that's what's been said here. We need to be thinking about, how can we use technology in our way, in our innovative, unique way, to be able to move us along, instead of continuing to perpetuate something that is the programming and the miseducation that is our mind, in my opinion.
I think that hits on it. Speaking to the functionality, because I work with a group called True Colors, and it's people that are gang members, and the emphasis is on economic empowerment. But it's about 45, 50 guys, and now they have this brewing company. And basically it's gangs, whether it be disciples, whether it be Bloods, Crips, all coming together in order to create and produce beer, right? So now we can plug in education to that environment where it truly is decentralized, where we truly are. We can curate the content. How do we build functional systems for you, brother? The brother is coming out of the pen that nobody else will hire, but this program and this structure, now it allows us to get to the front of productive capacity, and we can talk about deeper economic conversations, deeper technological conversations, because we can build curated content for these decentralized communities. So I think functionality and us understanding that decentralization works best for us, because we need to disintermediate and we need to remove all of the noise so that we can build curated solutions for our community.
And then on just a practical level, the UX, the front end part of it, really understanding our demographic, what their needs are, and then combining that with the African aesthetic and African functionality. Like, what does that mean? Like, that has to be our foundation. How, just like you said, how we always innovate. We make something out of nothing, right? And everyone is waiting for us to see how we're going to use the technology so they can take it and make billions off of it, right? So my first proposal is to say that this is a sacred Black space, and that this is for us and we need to heal. Now, if you want to come on board to heal us and only us, then it's okay. But still, no, I just think it should be a sacred Black space. I mean, because what happens is that people come in and they appropriate, and exploit us. So I feel that we need to, and once people know this, the Black people that are involved in it, because just like, let's say you have people who are suffering from domestic violence and women, they don't let men in, right? Because they're like, if they were abused by men, it triggers. And I say that we need a sacred Black space just for us, because white people can trigger us and make us act in ways like they've trained us to act. Like, oh, let me just give you all of our secrets and all our information, and let me soothe your tears, So I think that's our foundation. And then once we have a solid foundation that's based on also healing, the programming, then we can take this and soar. But until that time, because I always think of the Chinese people who had that period of time when it was like no foreigners involved, and they were able to look where the Chinese are today. So we need to that has to be our core. And then, understand our aesthetics, our needs, our demographics, and then build a design, a UX design, and then people will come and then we'll flourish. That's hypothetically, that's.
So Mason, I agree with everything you said. I think the challenge there is, they appropriate and steal because they also fund. So a big major part of it is funding, right? The government, the government and a lot of other philanthropists, they are releasing a lot of money into the stream now to support programs like this, but they're still the ones funding. And believe it or not, they're still pulling strings. So a major part of it is being able to fund our own initiatives, which, quite frankly, we all know is a major gap.
But we can do it, though. I mean, that's one thing great about technology. Crowdsourcing, we have all these different technology applications that we never had before. We just need to just apply it, that we can do it.
I think what plagues our community the most is the tyranny of good intentions and the racism of diminished expectations. Once we overcome those, and this allows us now, if we become completely self-reliant, in my view, those are done. The capital is always a challenge, but I think sometimes efforts become so dilutive, because as Sister Mason was saying, you have outsiders coming in, that tyranny of good intentions. They're coming in to help out. And what happens is they usurp the movement, they usurp the intellectual property, and they go in another direction, and we're left with the plight. And I think that has to be addressed, in education of that, and it's kind of all encompassing.
But also to create a product. Excuse me, sorry to interrupt you, but to create a product. Why can't we create a product? Create a product and purchases. I mean, with technology, create a product and said, okay, support, but something that's needed, okay. And then we can create our own income.
Yeah, we're talking about creating a product. We only have 5 minutes left. Talking about creating a product, how can we ensure that whatever that we create, we can be able to own it? Like you were talking about, we can create and then somebody comes and they take the use. But how can we create and then we own what we have created? But
isn't that what the purpose of blockchain is? Is that it's a consensus, and then it's on the chain. It's like this is ours,
Yeah.
So
I wanted to ask that question so that whoever will be listening will get to understand the value that the Web3, the value that the blockchain tech brings in as far as ownership is concerned. So
I would say, just to answer, my thoughts on that question would be that I think we need to build libraries that can't be burnt to the ground. I think that it wouldn't be in our best interest to get rid of all of the misinformation and disinformation that exists. It would be better for us to categorize it and see what's been used against us, and to start thinking tactically about how we can begin to understand what's drawing our attention. There's a whole thing around this attention economy that's taking place. And one of the projects that we're working on is Timbuk 2.0, which is essentially a library that exists in Web4 that will allow for us to access information for web and mobile applications that's contextually relevant to our community. something that they can't destroy, can't be burnt down, because we want to use blockchain technology to hold that information in a space that is dedicated and committed to what we need to do as a community. So collectively getting the researchers and the people to bring that data into one environment so that our developers can find great ways to use it is a big thing that I think needs to take place, in my opinion.
Yeah, like Sister Mason said, we have to create something, create a product, create an environment, and we have to make sure that our people are a major part of the ecosystem, right? It's all about numbers. We have to make sure that if we want to control it, we have to have people in there who understand it, right? Who understand it, utilize it, because if they understand, utilize it, they're going to be bringing in their network, their friends, their family, right? If they're finding a benefit. So making sure that we are a major part of the ecosystem.
Thank you so much. I think we did throw around a lot of ideas, and I believe the listeners, are taking notes, and I also believe that from here we're going to apply some of the things that we have been discussing, and ensuring that our education is secured, and also that our people get the right information, and also that we're able to have those digital libraries that do not ban. I love that when he talked about libraries that do not ban. So definitely, if we can be able to take all that information and be able to digitize whatever information that we have, and we can be able to build those digital infrastructures, we'll be able to, Mason said, talked about healing, talked about understanding our demography and all that. So coming at the end of the discussion, maybe I would like for you to say one little something that you want to say. Yeah, just to summarize what our discussion. If you've got anything you want to say.
Well, just to combine, I think we need a think tank, because people are spending 24/7 watching us and studying us and using our information and our data. So we need to take it back, and we need to use it.
Okay. Thank you, Mason, for that.
Yeah. I'll go back to education. People, especially in our community, need to understand the power of Web3. They need to understand the power of Web2. Okay, they need to understand what's the current technology to really understand the power of Web3. If you don't understand what Web2 is compared to Web3, then you're not going to really be a champion of Web3. But understanding the potential of Web3, talking about potential, again, education, and not just the young ones. Education from K all the way through people with gray hair like me who are a little technology adverse. If they are not used to using the current technology, then Web3, the metaverse, they may think it's too much for them. So education, and having platforms and interfaces that are easy to understand.
Yep, well said, Colin. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
And I think it kind of a synopsis of it all. I think it's really self-reliance, economic. I preach this all the time: economic independence, and then as far as education, we have to tell our own curated stories. We have to get rid. Or we have to acknowledge that there's disinformation, misinformation, that there are external groups that are driving our value. And if we can begin to recapture the value that we create, I talk about the internet of value all the time. And what's really happening is Web3 allows us to really own it. You can be the world now is going away from globalism, if you will. If you watch what's happening closely, people are getting more interconnected within their own in-groups. We have an opportunity to build, as a brother was saying earlier, the infrastructure, especially technologically, to build our own economy. And we must educate, but we must understand it's got to be self-reliance. We have to be driven by us, and to clarify who's the us.